Good morning, all, and welcome to Office Hours, the show where we answer your technical media production questions 7 days a week. Courtney, let's get to it.
All right. The first one in is from a young man named Ronnie Hofsey, and he says, how to set up Next Cloud and TrueNAS. Anyone using this combo already? And where to begin? And what to expect? Remote working and for travel for the entire team.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, so just to have some background information, we are using everything from Dropbox to internal file sharing directly from our NAS today, and we synchronize and we bring with us SSDs with the projects that we need to complete. And sometimes it would be nice thinking of using a little bit more modern tools. Also, even if we are a small team, we still have the same tasks that we need to do, and they are repeating. So every other week we need to do something on the road if we are going out on the road doing external productions. So the question is basically, how is this done in other companies? And let's say for a small team, and we use Frame.io a lot for distributing video amongst the teams and including audio. So how is this? How should we do it? How should we approach this kind of problem?
Alex?
Only if you have to. So I think that we see a lot of folks get into this mode of, like, I've got to have a NAS, or I've got to build all this very complicated pipeline, and they end up spending more time administering the pipeline than they do actually doing the work. There's an enormous amount of this that can be done without, if you don't need to use these things, I don't think I necessarily would. So if you've got a NAS is great if you've got a lot of shared resources, you've got to have a lot of people doing these things at the same time. But be careful. I mean, I would say a solid half of the time that we've done something like this, it was we got kind of into it and wish we hadn't started. It was like, oh, the folder stuff was working just fine. And so I think that, I'm not saying that you should, there's definitely a place where you move to, hey, we've got a bunch of editors, we've got a bunch of resources, we've got a bunch of things coming in. And it makes sense to do that. But I would be careful of turning it over. You just may find that it's a big time suck without a lot of output.
And Ronnie?
Yeah, I was actually kind of moving towards that type of answer. So it's good to hear you, Alex, just telling us to stay away. That's nice to hear.
It's not stay away. It's just know why you're doing it and making sure that you're not doing it to do it, because it's definitely not the kind of thing, because it's easy to really jack it up, and so and lose files and have all kinds of other things, and just have connectivity issues. You'll be in the middle of production and suddenly you don't have what you need. And so, and again, there are definitely times when we've done it where it's made sense for these types of things, either shared a variety of different kinds of shared networks, shared drive systems. But that was when we absolutely needed it. It was clear that we needed it. And then we spent weeks only working on that solution so that it was ready to go.
And John?
I would say, if you're using it for remotely editing, using the native tools like the Blackmagic Cloud or Frame.io with Adobe's products, those make a lot of sense a lot of times, because you don't want to be, have one NVMe drive, have some critical project that some editor's working on, they get sick, they separate from the company, whatever the case, and you lose that data. So it makes sense to centralize storage sometimes. And then it also sometimes we'll bring our own NAS onto a site we're doing a large production from, and then we'll have that sync off-site, so we have a backup of it that we could quickly restore from if we needed to.
And Alex?
I was listening to John. I couldn't remember what I'm saying. Just keep moving.
And to bring in Mickey McAteer from the chat, too. He says that for his NAS setups, he just builds SFTP shares for remote upload and download that directly from the NAS.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say, is that I am very interested in the Blackmagic Cloud. I think that I've waited for it to mature a little bit, but I think that could be a solution that I'd probably be more interested in using something like that than I would be to try to build something more exotic. I think that's why Blackmagic is going down that path, is because they realize that there's a real value to that, but people don't want to build it on their own.
Next question.
Next one comes in from John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania. He says, Alex talked about using After Effects to create a time lapse effect from a regular speed video. What's this called, and how do you do it?
Alex.
So the funny thing is that I don't actually have After Effects licensed right now because I don't use it often enough. I turn it on when I need it and turn it off when I don't because I don't use it regularly anymore. Most of my motion graphic stuff is all done in Motion, which it has been for maybe the majority of my work has been done in Motion for the last 10 years. And when I need After Effects, I open it up and I license it for the month and I use it and I close it back up again because I don't use it often enough. Time echo is what you're looking for. And the tricky part is that you need to, the way that it has to work is that you have to take your, build a pre-comp of the time of the video file. So what I don't do is I don't shoot a time lapse. I shoot video because what that does is if you think about the way the frames work is if I'm grabbing, let's say, a frame every second, that means if I'm shooting video, I've got these 15 frames on either side that I can use as motion blur. And so what time echo does is let you look at the frames on either side and blur them and blend them together. And if you pull them together and blend them together, you end up with this nice little motion blur that is there. So, and especially if you go more than a second, so let's say every 5 seconds, now you've got lots and lots, 70, 80 frames, and you can build this nice gradient. And so you can build these nice motion blurs of people that are doing that. And I really should do a tutorial on it. I think that more people would do it if they knew how to do it. And it's not obvious. Like if you apply it just to the clip, it doesn't work. So you do have to pre-comp that clip to make it actually work. And it's been so long since I've done it that I have to think about it again. so it's but it's been a couple years since I've done that kind of time lapse, but it works really well. And I wish someone would just do a plugin that would do it. Hyperlapse is the closest thing that I've seen from Facebook that will have that effect without you having to go through the After Effects stuff. But the advantage of the After Effects one is you can use really high res files. I mean, I've done ones with 8K footage. And then what you can do is what's cool is you have all that motion blur, and then you can do zoom ins. You can kind of move inside the frame and around the frame, and that turns into a much more interactive. People don't really understand how you're doing what you're doing, which is kind of fun.
Courtney.
I was just going to clarify somewhat. The time lapse can be used has two different kind of meanings. One with still photography, which is kind of the effect only with motion photography that Alex is talking about, where things that are moving are kind of blurred and things that are not moving are nice and sharp. That was the effect you would get in the still photography when you'd hold the shutter open for a long period of time and stop down. And so that's the time-lapse kind of effect that Alex was talking about. Of course, there's time-lapse in video.
Hey, Robert, this is CJ.
A still camera to capture a frame every X number of seconds, and then when played back at normal speed, it looks normal. But in those cases, usually the shutter is not held open for a long period of time during that single. I guess you can control it during that single frame. So it just gives you speeded up motion, but not necessarily the blur effect that Alex is talking about. And that you do need After Effects for. The other time lapse where you can take just a regular video and speed it up so it looks like it was captured, so that you compress, 4 hours of time into 10 seconds, can be done on most editing packages just with the speed ramp of increasing the speed, and it will take every fifth frame or something, and it won't necessarily add motion blur to it.
CJ.
Yeah, I've also been playing with this, taking time. I'm trying to take a time lapse where I'm compressing weeks and weeks down to only a 30 seconds per minute. I don't have the space to do video for that long, so I've been playing with a frame every 5 seconds, a frame every 2 seconds. But I agree, I don't like the choppiness of it. So compromise.
And if you're speeding up, remember, you're just getting extra frames. So if you do a frame every 5 seconds, but you're only sampling once a minute, like, if you're doing something over weeks, you're going to end up, that sample is not going to be every 5 seconds. You're going to actually speed that up, I think. So if you're doing a time lapse of 3 weeks, you're probably going to want that sample to be every minute or every 2 minutes or whatever. So capture it every 5 seconds, and then you'll still have the data that you want, right? You know what I'm saying?
Well, what I was saying is I'm taking the every 2 second capture, the every 5 second capture of a frame, but then using Topaz to interpolate and put some and put some ND on it. It's not perfect yet, but it's the first tests I've been doing have actually been pretty cool. I think I've almost cracked it. It's really cool.
Yeah, and the other plugin for that, which is for After Effects, is the Real Motion. The Real effects. They've been doing frame interpolation for a long time. So, but both of those would be, and it's not particularly expensive.
Just a reminder that you can continue to ask questions on this show. You can use Mukana, our Q&A system. If you're not sure how to do that or how to participate, go over to officehours.global/join, put in your name and email, and we'll send you all the information that you will need to do that. And of course, you can vote on the questions and chat with us on the show live. That's one of the nice perks about that. Next question.
Next one comes in from Douglas Carmichael, who asks, are there any Raspberry Pi Linux distributions that are focused on headless applications and default to the serial console?
Jason.
Oh, there are many. I'll give you my top three. So Raspberry Pi OS Lite is certainly the one of the most common used ones. Diet Pi is a Debian-based kernel for minimal usage. And then Tiny Core Linux, which is also called PiCore. All three of those are exactly what you're talking about. Tiny Core, PiCore, runs entirely in RAM, and it can be set just upon boot. It's one boot switch, and there you go.
Next question.
From Tromsø, Norway, Ronnie Hofsey asks, can we see a future where software switchers like Viz Vectar, mimoLive, and vMix are replacing hardware? What would be the limiting factors besides latency?
Go ahead, John.
I think scalability is a concern. How much data you can get in and out of a computer is definitely a limiting factor. There are systems that are coming up that are going to readily compete with what we're doing on a hardware basis. But right now, latency and inputs and outputs are going to be your greatest limiting factor.
Go ahead, Jesse.
For me, the limiting factor would be how efficiently you can troubleshoot when something goes wrong with hardware. We can pull the unit and put a new unit in and fix it, in 3-5 minutes. When you're doing strictly cloud, are you going to be on the phone waiting for a tech service to pick up and walk you through what's going wrong?
Courtney?
Well, I can see the future, and the future is now, because all of those things do work now to replace hardware. One problem that we see with them is that you have to have hardware that's up to the task. And because if you're using your main computer that you use for everything else, for your Zoom call or your incoming NDI feeds, which may be required if you're using a software switcher, it can become overtaxed depending upon whether or not pick your software that you mentioned there is using hardware acceleration. If you've got a hefty video card, like an Nvidia card, like a 3090 or 4090 or 4070 even, it can take a lot of the pressure off the CPU, and it can handle it just fine. If you don't have a high-end video card, if you're just using internal graphics, and it depends on whether it's a PC or a Mac and whether it's written to support the native hardware, it can choke down your computer, and you can be limited in the number of inputs that you can have or overlays that you can have, since it's having to do all the heavy lifting in the CPU of the computer itself.
Alex?
Yeah, as everyone said, latency and stability and scalability are all the things that a lot of us will lean into hardware for. So you do have to if you're going to do something with this hardware, or if you're going to do something with software, you really need to treat that piece of hardware like an appliance. Like, this is what it does. It runs this software. It doesn't do 6 other things while you're doing it. If you don't do that, your chances of running out of resources is pretty high. Also, it's just pure I/O. You take a switcher that's got 40 input, and again, if you're coming from a Blackmagic world, and you have a switcher that has 40 inputs and 24 outputs, try doing that in software. That is not a trivial problem, especially at 4K. It's not a trivial problem to solve. And so those are some of the things that we kind of think about. Also, just expense, the cost of a computer that would do what a ATEM Mini Extreme ISO does would cost more than the Mini Extreme ISO. So it might have more fluidity and might have more flexibility, but that would be the case. That said, we're using all of those. I'm using mimoLive for some of the shows that I'm doing. vMix is being used on Saturdays. Viz Vector is being used on, so we're using all of those. And in those environments, they're working pretty well.
Harshid?
So when we look at software and hardware, I think they kind of lean on each other. So we are in this hybrid world at this point, I would say, because let's say you have any kind of controls or faders and such that you want to connect to said Mimo or Viz Vector. I feel that having something tactile could be useful. And again, the cloud is a great piece, but it's another solution. It's not the one said, done, and all solution. So I think we're maybe into a more hybrid traversal rather than pick this or pick that. Software always has some glitches, other variables. So I would say stick to hardware.
Alexander, let's jump to the next question.
This one's from the QR code. Laurel in Jamaica is asking, would you use the XR18 mixer in a professional setting? I used it yesterday on an event with over 1,000 persons, and it didn't work out. I did use a Linksys E900 on it. What are the pros and cons when using it?
John Wallace, kick us off.
I would not use it if I was being paid. That is not a professional mixer. It costs less than most two-channel interfaces I would feel comfortable using in a professional environment. The E900 is also not a professional networking gear. So putting that in that situation is just not a good way to succeed. If you're going to use an XAir18 in any sort of environment, make sure you're wired up to a computer with a control surface or an iPad with an Ethernet adapter. It's going to be much more stable. But that is a piece of gear that is relatively affordable. But I would not rely on it for any sort of production I'm paid for.
Alexander?
Yeah, I agree with all that. I guess we should also define what is professional, right? So to some people, performing in a band to 500 people or even 100 people, they're getting paid, so that is technically a professional gig. Now, that piece of equipment, the Behringer XR18, might not be up to the tasks of doing that, and those mixers are known to have really flawed internal Wi-Fi modems. And so if you're going to get into something like that, you should really, like John said, think about a hardwired connection, disable the built-in modem. A lot of these types of products have these problems. In fact, I used to use a Soundcraft UI24, and they all have the same problem. They all have the same modem problems. And the solution was to disable the built-in modem and never ever use wireless for anything critical. Like I would never mix a show with just a tablet and depending on that Wi-Fi connection, because guess what? It's going to have problems. A hardwired connection, and then just switch it. You can do your mixing in on a computer. In fact, what I often do is I have a touchscreen display connected to a computer that is hardwired to that mixer. And that's how I do all the mixing. And that is rock solid. So know what you're getting into. If you have to use Wi-Fi for whatever reason, let's say you got to walk up on stage and you got to ring out the room and you have no crew, you're just doing this yourself, then get a capable access point. Something from Ubiquiti would be a lot better than that E900.
Ronnie?
Yeah, the only time I've seen this kind of half professional is when a band comes up with a pre-rigged IAM setup where there is absolutely no need to adjust anything as they go. Everything is prefixed, and as Alexander said, never ever this is what Alex is saying. Never ever never ever use Wi-Fi. At least not the built-in if you're doing something that is being listened to by 1,000 people out in the venue. Never, ever.
Never, ever, never, never, never. But I'll tell you what you should do ever. Hang out with us on weeknights. We've got 2 evening shows, Extra Hours on Mondays at 6 p.m. Pacific, and then the rundown is Thursday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific. We have a lot of fun. Next question.
This one's from Jesse Kester in Glendale. The iPad 9th Gen Photos app outputs 16:9 through HDMI. The iPad 10th Gen Photos app outputs 4:3. Is there any way to get the 10th Gen to output at 16:9 in the Photos app?
Go ahead, Jason.
The short answer is no. For video, it does do 16:9, and I think this was just a choice that Apple made for photos, where the photos will end up in 4:3. You can edit them And if they are in 16 by 9, then they will show up in 16 by 9. But I am aware of no way to do that.
Ronnie?
Yeah, I'm just adding to the question. Is it possible to just have that output go to like a converter or something? There are probably different types of converters, and then create a 16 by 9. So if anyone feels up to answering that as well.
But I guess you're not going to get a great signal because you're going to be cropping it and going in. I do know that the 10th generation iPad was the first iPad where like USB-C DisplayPort external displays was a thing. So they added that to whatever the USB-C module was in between the 9th and 10th generations. So it's possible that the 10th generation iPad, when plugged into the external monitor, is able to negotiate this is what the aspect ratio is, and then change the output, and perhaps that's a limitation on the 9. You had another thing, Jason?
Yeah, I'll answer Ronnie's addition to the question. Sure, with DVR, you could push in on the frame and enforce 16 by 9, but I mean, you're pushing in on the frame.
Next question.
Omar Gadon in Orange County, California. Has anyone used generative AI presentation apps like Tome, Gamma, or Beautiful.ai? Any recommendations on one to get a good framework for a new deck?
Alex?
I guess the question would be, what kind of deck are you building? I use AI very, very heavily for my decks, but it's only for the images. So I don't have the deck build the actual deck. I mean, I don't have the AI. There are some AI. These are really interesting ones, actually, that will build your deck. But the question, what I guess when I build a deck, the deck has to be really good. I'm usually talking about a lot of money. We're talking about a lot of things that have, a lot of decisions that have to be made. And I spend a lot of time on that deck. Like I spend, and I make sure that deck, does exactly what it needs to do to tell the story. Generally, that deck has almost no text. It is visualizations of the things that I'm talking about, and I know what I'm going to talk about, and I don't need the deck as notes. And so it's a very specific thing. If you look at an Apple presentation, that's kind of the gold standard for what deck should look like, except for the quilt. I mean, I don't know if the quilt is that useful, but outside of that, the quilts are cool, by the way. I mean, doing that for your own products, it's a lot of work. But really thinking about the visuals. What I use a deck for are visuals that support what I'm talking about in a deck. Now, if you're sending a deck out, the problem with AI is that it's really good at doing kind of middle of the road. That's not usually how I want my presentation to look. It is better than most presentations that I see. So middle of the road would be a huge improvement over what I see on a day-to-day basis from people's presentations. But I'd be very careful of having AI build all this stuff for you if you really want to build something that means something. And I think that's what AI is not very good at yet.
Jesse?
The other thing to keep in mind is that when you're using an online generative AI tool, there's no way for you to submit information that might be very sensitive to this tool without the tool ingesting it, analyzing it, and running it through a whole lot of processes. So any pitch that we do, any pitch deck we build, is pretty much like wall-to-wall sensitive information that we don't want getting out in any way. It's a really closed communication between us and the client. So I'd be really careful perhaps using these tools to get an idea of what a presentation might look or feel like, and then getting off that platform as quick as possible to build the actual presentation.
Jason?
Yeah, the AI tool is not going to deliver the presentation, so I would be very hesitant to allow it to build and decide upon, how exactly you're transitioning. I have to reiterate what Alex said, which is really important. Your deck is not your notes. You need to understand what you're saying, and really it truly should just include almost no text and just be a way to illustrate your point.
I give a presentation within our organization that it's basically here's how not to have a terrible presentation. And one of the best things that Alex ever taught me was to have bits of humor through these generated images. So I have one like to support what Jason just said, don't read off the screen. And then there's a picture of this like cartoon character with his back to an audience full of people like reading a screen. You put that up for a second with no words at all, but to punctuate a point that you're saying, that's really, really powerful. So the message that you're getting across is coming from you. That's why you're there in person. That's why you're on a Zoom call. If they wanted to read a bunch of text, you could have sent them a paper. So, next question.
Nikhil Kamkokar in South Brunswick. I'm setting up for recording an Unreal Engine course on PC with Nvidia A6000 using OBS, Nvidia Broadcast Camera, so I can get a transparency for the background, PointerFocus / ZoomIt for highlighting things. Are there other tools, widgets that would help?
Ronnie?
Yeah, if this is not going to be a live production, I would probably choose a whole another way of doing this. I would probably just shoot my own on a good camera, or as good as possible, towards a medium quality green screen, and then have everything done in post-production in, for instance, DaVinci Resolve. Then you can use whatever tools or graphic add-ons as a top layer to illustrate or zoom in and zoom out, etc. So just record everything on separate channels, and this is what I would do, and then just edit it afterwards and have a big cup of coffee or many cup of coffees and make a professional product.
The other thing that I would consider about highlighting is if you've got PointerFocus or ZoomIt, which is somehow highlighting the cursor, putting a window around it so that attention is drawn to it on the screen, just be careful that when whatever tool that you're using, that you're not laying too much concrete, that you can't back out and then decide to go in another direction. Because if you burn in that to the record, you're stuck with it. And then if it doesn't look right, or you want to go in a different direction, you don't have the options. And then you can start to play with, okay, I'm going to drag and drop elements on top of what I've got in the record to go and get the final product. Ronnie?
Yeah, exactly. And this is why you should do everything in post-production, because you can speed up things, you can change things, you can make this kind of storytelling much more powerful compared to what you can do kind of when you're doing a live presentation. Of course, you can change your mind when you're doing the recording and then go back and start over again. But doing this afterwards in post-production is so much powerful, and you have all the effects at hand, and I promise you it will be a better production.
Next question.
From the QR code, Jeremy Steele in Washington, D.C. I'm wanting to simultaneously live stream 9x16 to TikTok, 16x9 to YouTube. Love a software solution, but open to a non-Alex priced hardware piece.
Ooh, non-Alex priced. Go ahead, John.
I'm not sure what an Alex is, but OBS can do this fairly simply. There's a plugin called Atom. I'll post it in the chat. You are able to leverage that to have another OBS session, essentially, where you can make a vertical canvas and orient the camera and anything else you want in that. You can set up the scenes so they're linked. So as you switch through different scenes, it will be coordinated, and it'll move on both the YouTube side as well as the TikTok side. There is also the TikTok player. A lot of times if you're shooting 16x9 and trying to move it into 9x16, you're going to make compromises. So if you have the ability to shoot separately, you can frame differently or use like a 6K camera and move it into like a 69. Then you can kind of reframe as well. So just be aware of those limitations, but it's a fairly simple thing. And I mean, creators do it every day, all day long. So
I just checked the markets. It looks like the Alex is still trading at the retail price of Photoshop at around $700 back in the day. Alex, can we operate in these constraints?
Well, I mean, it's not. I don't know of any non-Alex encoders that I would probably use for non-Alex price. That I probably my entry level is probably the Videon encoders. So the Videon Edge encoders is probably what I'd start with. But as John said, that vMix as well as OBS. OBS is your free version, except for the hardware that you're using to run it. Should work. And I actually, for something relatively simple, I've been running OBS for some tests that I have. I need really high frame rates on M4 Mac Mini, and it's been running. I haven't crashed it yet. And I've been pushing it pretty hard. So it is getting more stable on the Mac platform. So that could be a possibility. One thing to think about is is how you're going to set that encode up and what those graphics are going to look like. Generally, we just center people, make sure that they're centered. So that looks a little different than what we would have in the 16:9. But if you center them like we do on this show, it'll go either direction.
Jason?
So if you're not doing a whole lot of complex stuff and it really is actually just switching something that doesn't actually require a switcher, I will give you the simplest possible way to do this. You get a rig, you put one iPhone this way, you put one iPhone this way, and you stream out of both of them.
And that is a really popular rig, by the way. We see creators doing this all the time. They buy these. There's these suction cup stickers that you can get for your phone that a lot of creators will put on the back of their phones, and they'll have two phones, and they'll suction cup them together to do exactly what Jason's talking about.
We've got some more ways for you to ask questions, and they're open all the time. You can ask questions 24/7 at askofficehours.global. That's askofficehours.global. Nothing to log into, nothing to sign up for. All you have to do is go to askofficehours.global, or it's at the QR code right here. Put in your name, put in your question. We'll work it in over the next few shows. Next question.
Jeff Vealey in Henderson, Texas. What's the most budget-friendly do-it-yourself way to acoustically treat a filming space that's roughly 18 by 20 with 14-foot ceilings? The room is a blank canvas.
Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, so if this is a permanent solution, I would probably build rock wool dampers and the bass traps, etc., and have everything done the do-it-yourself way. Just make frames. I'll post a link in the chat afterwards to some guy that are kind of knowledgeable about building these things yourself. The other thing I would take a look at, and what we are using frequently in our studio facility, which is changing all the time, is these soundproofing or sound dampening or reverberation removal absorption sound blankets, similar to moving blankets. I guess moving blankets would be much cheaper. This is a flexible thing, and we are using a lot of these. Since you mentioned film studio, we're using a lot of these duo colors, so it's white on the one side and black on the other, so you can choose to remove light, or you can use the white as a reflector for adding some light. So those are kind of flexible. Just hang them from C-stands, etc., and don't forget the sandbags.
Courtney?
Yeah, I agree with Ronnie. There's the cheap way to go. Harbor Freight has these $8, but remember, if this is temporary installation, you can hang these up or put them on C-stands if you have them. But remember, these are blue, so they're going to reflect blue light. The better solution is to go with something that costs twice as much from Film Tools that are black. They have some that are black on one side, white on the other, depending upon if you need reflection off the surfaces. Another solution you might look at is, you see them in a lot of studios, is if this is a permanent installation, you can put a track in around the ceiling that holds a rolling sight, that holds a movable cyc cloth, which is a drapery that's hung off of little rollers, like the kind you see in hospitals that isolate one bed from another. But they make them with a fairly heavy cyc material. It can be either black, white, or blue a lot of times, or green screen, if you have green screen. And so that you can pull it around in the off-camera area to absorb a lot of the sound in front of the walls. And if you keep it loosely draped, it'll do a great thing it'll do great at absorbing reflected sound. Remember, if you have, you need to cover or sound treat the walls that are not on camera, especially any parallel walls. If you can break up one wall of two parallels, that is the best way to go to eliminate the standing waves, which is the reflections that bounce back and forth between two parallel surfaces. If you have any windows, close the drapes if they have drape treatments on them. Because that'll prevent that glass from reflecting. Glass is probably the most reflective surface and can create the most liveliness of echo in a room. So try closing the drapes if there are drapes and putting up sound blankets. And if you can't treat the ceiling, treat the floor with carpet.
John?
You can also treat the walls with carpet. I've gone to Salvation Army in a pinch and bought a bunch of cheap rugs. And then when the event was over, I just go and donate them back. So they get the double benefit. If it's not something permanent, that's something definitely easy to do. It's really quick to hang, and definitely budget friendly.
Jason?
All of this is great advice. I won't repeat it. Bass traps in the corners are always a really easy thing to do, just really big, heavy foam. Even if it's just a foam block with kind of a cutout in it to just break up the sound frequency. And if you look behind me, these are from, I think they were Sam's Club, but what they actually are the things that you see on gyms. And it's the flooring for gyms that gets, put together. And it's actually pretty decent, assuming you go one versus the other. And that breaks up the sound pretty well.
Yeah, another thing that I have seen used is, because you talked about it being a filming space. If you have some sort of acoustical tile that you're putting there in the ceiling, you're able to, because you have so much ceiling space, 14 feet, you're able to, let's say you drop that down a foot or 2 feet to make the room a little bit shorter, but now you not only can put in specialized acoustic tiles to go into the little 2x4 holes in the ceiling, but you also have a grid. So if you don't want to put too much light on it, you can get those little scissor clamps, and then that's going to go into the drop ceiling. And then after it's hooked into the drop ceiling, then you're going to move on and have a lot of fun with a grid. Once you go grid, you'll never leave it. Next question.
From the QR code, Lee Faulkner in New Haven, Connecticut. Hi, can someone tell me how to publish spherical 360 video and have both the video and ambisonic audio pan when the viewer drags to look around the 360 degrees? Video pan's okay, audio doesn't pan on YouTube and only on X-axis in Vimeo.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you think about the platforms that you're publishing to, YouTube, unless you're on some certain desktops, but almost certainly on the home, like an Apple TV, some sort of over-the-top box, that's going to give you a 5.1 surround mix. So I don't think there's any sort of thing that's down mixing whatever your audio output is down to binaural. It's interesting that Vimeo is doing the X-axis pan, but that's, to me, is the simplest because they just have a left-right slider. They'd have to go through a lot more processing in order to get it to, downmix your binaural and be aware of the gyroscopic data or whatever the angle that you're panning around. I've just started to play with 360 video myself, but I wasn't recording audio with it, so now you've sparked a whole nother line of thinking. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, Lee, I don't think you're missing anything. I think this may be a platform limitation that I am certain that they are aware of and are probably trying their best to fix.
Let's move on to the next question.
Douglas Carmichael, as LLMs advance, will they become a dominant part of software development workflows?
Go ahead, Jesse.
I don't know if dominant is the right word, but intrinsic, yes, they will definitely be intrinsic to software development.
Ronnie?
Yeah, I have a client that we do some podcasts for, and in the last episode, they were talking about how they used more and more of these AI tools. They are talking about several different types of tools to be able to develop things and prototype things faster as a kind of default thing to do. And they are also adding all these new technologies into their software platform for their end users to use. So we see that definitely there will be more and more and more, and at sometimes some of the softwares that we are using will be entirely made up of AI, both from the development phase and in the user phase. So no doubt about it, it will come.
Courtney?
Surprise, it's already here. Yes. Microsoft has Copilot code at GitHub. Or GitHub has Copilot code. It's owned by Microsoft. And so Copilot, which is a code writing that can write code in a variety of different languages. It's built in to Copilot code, which is available now. And a lot of programmers are using this just to write subroutines or segments, or if they get stuck on something. It's used as an accelerator for coders now. So instead of doing all the drudgery work of having to code little subroutines for I/O or things like that, you can just call on Copilot code to write some of those routines. And then you, of course, have to check it and integrate it into your running code. But it can do that right now. So it speeds up coding quite a bit. And there are a number of tools available on a variety of different coding languages that you can use right now.
John?
Yeah, we use this pretty heavily where I work. We have about 12 to 1,300 developers who work for us. And we don't have our level 1 techs using it because we really want them to get a good feel of the basics. And so what we really focus on is making sure that we can level up our 2s and 3s and our seniors and be able to allow them to move faster. One benefit too, because we run our own GitHub library, is then you can then train against all of your code that you've already developed. So it understands the patterns that you use. You can put controls around it. There's a lot of tuning that's available as well that make sense in your environment. So it can follow the patterns you've established and allows our seniors to really wire mock up really quickly applications, and then we can demo and then iterate and then train the people that we have coming up.
The other thing that it's enabling is that it's enabling people who aren't coders but have ideas to partner with one of these AI solutions and then come up with a mock-up of their idea and be able to more effectively communicate it with the person who is going to take that program to the finish line. I'm using this pretty frequently to try and build solutions and programs that I've only started using in the last year, but the output that comes on the other end is pretty powerful, and I'm getting there very quickly because I'm using that AI piece as an accelerant. Jason?
Yeah, I have to reiterate that. The best chess in the world right now is not human versus human. It's not computer versus computer. It's not computer versus human. It's human-computer teams that are competing against each other, and that's kind of how I picture this.
Next question.
From the QR code, Darcy Worth in Algona, when I have a table on a Google slide, today specifically, I formatted the slide to be 8.5 by 11 and have a table that is almost the size of the whole slide. When I click, it jumps to the middle of the slide instead of going where I clicked.
Alex?
Yeah, this is some kind of formatting issue, and we've seen this before with Google Slides and actually other things. When the tables are too close to the edges, it can get to a point where it doesn't know where to put that cursor, and it starts to do things. Try bringing your table in. Give yourself a room of about an inch around it, or what would be roughly an inch, around 2.5 centimeters if you're not. But bring that in a little bit and just see if it continues to have that behavior. So make it smaller, see if that makes a difference. But a lot of times that can be something that it doesn't understand. It doesn't understand that format correctly.
Ronnie?
Yeah, and since it's Friday and I'm from Norway and probably are uncontrollable, what about not using tables that are the size of the slide and just redraw everything and make it look beautiful instead? I think that is a better approach.
When you make tables and numbers, they look really pretty.
I was going to say that. I was like,
yes.
Tables and numbers. If you're on a Mac and you haven't ever used numbers, the one thing that looks really pretty in numbers is tables.
Hey, you can hang out with us on the weekends, too. We've got live shows over the weekends. Tomorrow's our live Q&A, and Sunday's our introspection show, where we talk a little bit more about the industry. You can ask questions about Office Hour, but here's the deal. If you want to be a part of it, you got to be in Mukana. So if you're not there, go to officehours.global/join and hang out with us on the weekend. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. With electronic stores on decline, what big brand stores have you found to be the most useful when you need tools or supplies, either immediately or when away from your base? And what do you always and only buy online?
Ronnie?
I've for years just purchased things online. We still, in Scandinavia or northern parts of Europe, we still have one or two kind of chains that are still alive. They sell a lot of big electronics like refrigerator, etc. And they also have electronic departments, but they are smaller and smaller and smaller. And even these days, finding a memory card or SSD or something is proven to be a little bit more difficult. So, it's the end. And I was a part of starting that concept in the mid-90s, so I have a big part of it.
Jesse?
I'm lucky enough to be living in a pretty major metropolitan area, and I haven't bought anything online for a long time. We shop, 15 minutes away from Film Tools, so that's 90% of the film stuff that we need, and then the rest is at Home Depot. And it would be really hard, or Home Depot and Best Buy, sort of, and it would be hard to get me out of that ecosystem, because so much of the time spent walking the aisles is like the back of the brain is churning through how you're going to fix this problem, and like seeing the things that could fix it are kind of essential to how we build up all of our productions.
Courtney?
Yeah, they are getting hard to find, especially electronic parts, since Radio Shack closed. Radio Shack used to be a good go-to if you just needed some resistors or a couple of capacitors to repair something with. But hey, they're gone. Or also for connectors, XLR connectors, you could in a pinch get them there. Locally, about the only one we have left is old PackRad, Pacific Radio. They moved out. They're now out in the valley. They used to be here in Hollywood, but they have a large collection of cable you can buy by the foot, along with all types of connectors. They sell Nutric and tools, electronic tools, routers, wire connectors, pre-made cables, all that kind of stuff that is handy. They also sell some components. But for these days, for components, because I do a lot of electronics design, for switches, resistors, capacitors, integrated circuits, I buy from Amazon, and I can find just about everything I need on Amazon, and usually get it within 2 days. So, and you can get what used to cost you at Radio Shack for a little toggle switch used to cost $3.95 or $4.50 at Radio Shack. I can get 10 of them now from Amazon for that same price. So there's no beating Amazon for price versus availability.
Alex?
For some reason, I just remember I used to work in an electronics company. I used to work in shipping and receiving. And when Courtney was talking about 10, I was thinking about when we used to have to. I was like 18 years old, and the way you figure out if there's 100, you weigh 10, and then you tell it that's 10, and then you put a bunch more, and it tells you how many there are. But and sometimes if you had a lot of them, you want to be accurate, you count 100 of them. You count 100 of these little diodes, and we'd usually wait until someone got to 80, and we'd sit next to them and go 53, 47, 58, 50, and then you see them sitting there concentrating harder and harder, and then they'd be like, oh, I can't start over again. Anyway, Micro Center is one that was suggested here that I've gone to a fair bit. Another one to order stuff online if you're looking for raw components is Mouser, Mouser.com. These are very good prices. They're industrial prices for it. They aren't 2-day delivery. Usually you're putting in, you can have it done the next day if you want it, but you're going to pay money for it. But I buy a lot of raw components from Mouser. And you can just say, I want 1,000 of these. It'll tell you exactly how many they have in stock at any given time. And for fun, cool things that I build, United Nuclear is awesome. So
Alex,
I don't think I can say on the radio what I build with those, but United Nuclear is a great website.
Go ahead, Alexander.
Yeah, I do buy a lot of stuff online, but I also, for certain things, like to support the local economy. So there's a company called Canada Computers, which for any kind of PC parts, networking too, they're fantastic, and I buy a lot of stuff through them. They have their own brand of cables as well called ICAN, ICAN, and they're really good quality. Everything from HDMI to all sorts of adapters, anything you can think of. They're a really good company to deal with. I also, for tools, I just go to Canadian Tire for anyone who's been here and knows Canadian Tire. And yes, they sell more than just tires. It's awesome for tools. They've got aisles and aisles and aisles of tools, and it's awesome. I just go there. There's one right down the road from where I live. So I try to shop local as much as possible and support the local economy as much as I can.
Alex.
And if you want to buy magnets that come with safety warnings, once again, United Nuclear. You can buy them. They warn you to not let them get too close to each other or too far apart because the speed at which they can reach can break bones. These are really awesome magnets. Just in case you're wondering.
Courtney.
And I forgot one more. There used to be one in Hollywood, which was great because they were open 7 days a week, which is unlike a lot of the other parts stores are available. Is Amatron. They now moved out to the Valley. They're out there kind of near the Burbank Airport. But they have a pretty good size store now, and they handle a lot of AV equipment, and they also have a rental department so that you can rent a variety of projectors and sound gear, and anything that you would need for a live presentation there, and a lot of audio video gear as well. And they stock it all in that big warehouse there, so you can order online from them or visit their store in the San Fernando Valley if you are in the area.
And really, what all of this has been themed around is building solutions when you're away from your home base and you can't just go back into your treasure trove of gear and grab a solution. So so wherever you're traveling, you should know where's the closest hardware store, where's the closest electronics parts store, and where's the closest grocery store. And if you're international, go visit the store, because one of the most incredible things about traveling internationally and seeing how other countries' way of life is when you see what's in the grocery store and what's in the electronics store and what's in the hardware store, it's going to open up your mind to, these are the sorts of problems that I can solve with a 20-minute round-trip car ride instead of, we got to send someone or order it in. Just open up your mind. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's asking, is there any way to set up a Raspberry Pi via the serial console without a keyboard and display attached?
Jason?
The serial console. I'm not sure about the serial console, but you can SSH into the Raspberry Pi, and then you can do the initial setup that way through the terminal, if that's what you mean by the serial console. Then yeah, absolutely. I don't tend to do this for the very first boot. I do tend to just plug a thing in and establish the main password and the credentials, and then after that, absolutely, every single time.
If you're finding office hours valuable, there are a couple ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to the channel. Of course, we have volunteer opportunities. You can sign up at officehours.global/volunteer for that. And a really powerful way is you can donate at officehours.global/donate. We are a nonprofit, and when you chip in there, you help the show go every single day. Next question.
Rion Smith in Trinidad, West Indies. Have you guys came around this new OBS competitor, MELD Studio? Seems to have a simpler and smoother approach to creating scene styles and transitions, both Mac and PC, even has streamdeck integration.
Jesse?
I haven't tested it. I'm looking forward to playing with it almost as much as I'm looking forward to hearing Office Hours panelists say that they would not use it in a mission-critical production.
John?
It's a pretty nice piece of software. I've been testing it the past week or so. I have a couple of friends who are now doing some broadcasts from it. They seem to love it. It's a lot easier than OBS. It's a cleaner interface. A lot of the things that you are needing to go to plugins for in OBS, it's natively available. One of the biggest problems I've seen from my friends who are in the creator space is every time OBS updates, all their plugins break. And so they're very hesitant to move along the life cycle of that product. It ends up adding a lot of headaches to their workflow and production. So it's getting interesting. I've been chatting on Twitter with Joel, who's their CEO, and providing him a lot of feedback of things that I'd like to see. They're very interested in expanding the product. They are definitely interested in potentials like Zoom integrations. So it could be a nice Ecamm mimoLive competitor. And right now it's free. So they're definitely open to feedback. They're evolving it quickly. They've already added new features from the feedback they're getting. They're riding this wave of attention really well, and they're trying to evolve to kind of meet clients where they're at. So it's really nice.
Next question.
Chris Sabato in Albany, Oregon. Previous Office Hours guest Imry Halevi produced 9x16 live coverage of a Harvard tennis match. Will we see more of the vertical first coverage?
John?
Yeah, as the TikTok generation goes, they're not watching their phones horizontally. They're watching it vertically. I see my son watching some football games that way. My daughter watching people live stream concerts that way. It is definitely not a better experience for me than a TV, but the kids that are growing up, they're doing this. If you want people watching your coverage, being intentional with the 9x16 coverage and making it as best as it can will draw more eyes to your production. And maybe you'll move them into a different avenue where you're watching a better version of it, but you got to get people watching first, and all eyes are on TikTok and YouTube Shorts.
Jesse?
On YouTube, this is just YouTube, but our stories do 10x what our horizontal long form videos do in terms of view clicks and view time. It's the format that people are watching.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find that when it's people, like when I'm watching a musician or a singer or something like that, the 9:16 is really nice. But I feel like anything that's a sport on a field or a pitch that's wide, I would gravitate towards the landscape. But it's exciting to see people experiment in this space, and to look at the way that Harvard is producing their live sports. When we had this guest on, I believe it was last year, it was just amazing to see the kind of investment and the kind of innovation that's going on there and the way that they run their kind of talent program. These are definitely people worth paying attention to. Next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Since it is National Day of Unplugging, learn from today's Mukana trivia, is there anything in your system that benefits from being unplugged? How about just rebooting it every so often? And is some gear better off if never unplugged?
Jason?
I'll answer the last part first. Mechanical hard drives I find are usually best if they are never, ever unplugged. They can get very old, and they tend to only lose inertia when they've lost power. As far as things that I unplug every so often, yes. The sit-stand desk that I am sitting in front of is from Monoprice. I adore it, and it has this quirk where if it is not unplugged and replugged once a day, the buttons just die. So this became so annoying that I actually use a HomeKit-based outlet to automatically turn it off and then turn it back on at 10:37 every night, and then it comes back on at 10:38, and I can usually hear it go beep if I'm still up. And yes, it now works flawlessly.
Courtney?
Having suffered through a problem here that people know about, where the construction crew at the back of our building was digging down and went through the conduit and severed one of the main cables coming into the building providing power, which made it intermittent for a longest period of time, about a month. So I was used to the power just coming and going when it pleased. And sometimes being out for 5-6 hours at a time. And when this happens at night, I learned that, a portable radio with some batteries in it can keep you entertained for a little while if you have no lights to read by and no television and no internet connection. So that is really unplugged. And I also allowed me to, check my CyberPower UPS, which I have my switch on, and the Wi-Fi and the cable and the fiber gateway all plugged into, as well as my computer. And then at least my laptops can keep going on the internet for a while once I become unplugged in that respect. And as far as things that are better staying on all the time, everything except fluorescent lights that can burn in. These days, LED lights really have a lifetime that are pretty good in longevity. That'll probably outlive you. So I think leaving things plugged in and turned on is probably better than turning them off, except it wastes electricity.
Alexander?
I like to leave all my computers running 24/7. There's certain things I will power down that generate a lot of heat. I do turn off I finally wired my ATEM to a remote switch where I can it's mounted underneath my keyboard pull-out tray, and I will turn that off. But a lot of gear I like to leave running 24/7. I find gear, it puts more stress on the equipment going from a cold boot, especially if you find yourself ever in a high-end recording studio. Those high-end consoles that you see, those big 32, 48 channel and greater SSLs, APIs, Neve, they consume a lot of power, but they're not turning those things off.
Ronnie?
Yeah, that is actually a point. Professional equipment are often made to stay on for the entirety, and just boot down when you're moving it. An example of that is the newer Mac Minis from Apple, which is when they are powered down or in sleep, are using 3 or 4 watts. So these days, I think most of the equipment we have is kind of green, and are if they go into sleep mode, they are using very, very small amounts of power. So I would suggest to have them turned on and powered on, except for one thing, and that's plasma displays. They should never be turned on.
Never. If you have iOS devices, keep them powered on somewhere. I have an old iPhone that I wanted to turn on to use as a camera for something, and man, I feel like I got 6 months of notifications all at once. It just jumped off the table. So Alex was right. Just turn off your notifications. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you to the panel. It's great to spend an hour getting smarter. No one of us is as smart as all of us together, and lifetimes of experience are here every single day. Also, thank you to the back-end crew, not only helping keep the show run during the show, but everybody around the show, developing for it, organizing for it. Impossible to do it without you. And finally, thank you to the producers. Such great questions, and we almost got there today, but we had to send a couple back. So if you asked a Mukana, you can submit that next time you're watching. If it was a QR code, we'll fold that in starting early next week. Tlaloc traversal today, 37,000 miles. That's 59,000 kilometers, 290 million bananas for scale. See you in After Hours. Thank you, everyone, for the top of the show.
Magnets. It's all about magnets. It used to be all about ball bearings. But now it's all about magnets.
So if you
radioactive magnets in Alex.
Yeah.
If you take your Mix Pre and the Mac has a different sample rate, and then the Mix Pre it goes into a boot loop, and you have to plug it into not in interface mode in order to get it to restart. And
hey, you learn something every day.
I learn something every day.
That would be bad.
I learned that I can depend on Alexander and Courtney to bail me out. Thank you.
Dealing with that bad frame rate.
You're going to have a bad time. Pizza when you're supposed to hot dog.
Were you just trying to make me feel better going to black there? Or?
No, my camera turned off. Like I just looked up. It was like black, and I've never had that happen during a show before. My camera just went. I'm gonna